She hugged her pet, ready to freeze to death, until a human appeared and saved them both. Kira clutched her furry companion closer to her chest, feeling its rapid heartbeat against her own. The frigid wind howled around them, cutting through her thin gray dress like daggers of ice. Her orange skin, normally radiant with its golden speckles, had dulled to a muted amber as her body temperature dropped dangerously low. "It's going to be okay, Fluff," she whispered to the trembling blue creature in her arms. "We'll just fall asleep." The pet, a peculiar mix of kitten, puppy, and bear cub with thick azure fur, nuzzled against her neck, seeking whatever warmth remained in her slender frame. Its 4 stubby legs curled tightly against its body, and its tiny black eyes blinked slowly as the cold began to claim them both. Around them lay the scattered remnants of her spacecraft, now nothing more than twisted metal strewn across the icy landscape. The emergency beacon had been destroyed in the crash, and in the nearest settlement was hundreds of miles away. Not that anyone would be searching for her this far beyond the boundaries of known space. Kira had never meant to venture this far. A simple mapping mission had turned catastrophic when her navigation system malfunctioned, sending her spiraling through an uncharted wormhole. The exit had been violent, spitting her ship out directly into the atmosphere of this frozen planet. She'd barely had time to engage emergency protocols before impact. Now, huddled against the remains of her cockpit with nothing but fluff for comfort, she gazed up at the alien sky. 3 pale moons hung suspended among unfamiliar constellations, casting an eerie blue-white glow across the endless ice fields. It was beautiful in a stark, terrible way, a fitting final view. "At least we're together," she murmured, stroking Fluff's head. The creature made a soft chirping sound, its version of a purr, though weaker now as hypothermia set in. Kira's silvery hair whipped around her face as another gust of wind tore through their meager shelter. She tried to tuck it behind her pointed ears, but her fingers had grown numb and clumsy. Her deep blue eyes, once vibrant with curiosity and adventure, now drooped with exhaustion as her body fought a losing battle against the cold. She began to sing softly, an old lullaby from her homeworld, a final comfort for both herself and Fluff. The melody carried across the frozen wasteland, a lone voice in an otherwise silent world. As her consciousness began to fade, the ice beneath her seemed to vibrate. At first, she thought it was just her body shivering, but the sensation grew stronger. Something was approaching, something heavy. With great effort, Kira lifted her head. Through the swirling snow, a dark figure emerged, moving with purpose across the treacherous terrain. The silhouette grew larger, more defined, until she could make out the unmistakable form of a bipedal, being encased in heavy-duty combat armor. The figure stopped before her, towering and imposing in dark silvery plating. A helmet concealed its face, reflecting her own frightened expression back at her. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. Kira, an orange-skinned alien clutching her exotic pet, and this mysterious armored stranger. Then, without a word, the figure knelt down and extended gloved hands toward her. Kira flinched, unsure of the intention, but too weak to flee. To her surprise, the stranger gently scooped both her and Fluff into powerful arms, cradling them against an armored chest that radiated blessed warmth. "Who?" she tried to ask, but her voice cracked from the cold. The helmet tilted down toward her, and a deep, distinctly male voice responded in a language she didn't understand. The tone, however, was unmistakably reassuring. As the stranger carried them across the ice, Kira caught sight of a structure in the distance. Some kind of shelter or outpost. Hope, faint but persistent, flickered within her. Perhaps this wasn't the end after all. The last thing she remembered before unconsciousness claimed her was the steady rhythm of the stranger's footsteps and the surprising gentleness of his armored embrace. Warmth. That was the first sensation that registered in Kira's mind as consciousness slowly returned. Warmth and the soft weight of Fluff curled against her side. The creature's rhythmic breathing, a comforting reminder that they had both survived. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing a metal ceiling illuminated by soft amber lighting. She was lying on something cushioned, not luxurious, but infinitely better than the ice where she'd expected to die. A thermal blanket had been draped over her slender form, its material unfamiliar but effective. Kira turned her head, taking in her surroundings. The space was compact but efficiently organized. Clearly some kind of emergency shelter or outpost. Equipment lined the walls, most of it unrecognizable to her, though she could identify what appeared to be communication devices and survival gear. A movement caught her attention. The armored figure who had rescued her stood at a console on the far side of the room, his back to her. He had removed his helmet, revealing a head of short, dark hair. Even from behind, she could tell he was unlike any species she had encountered before. As if sensing her gaze, he turned. Kira's breath caught in her throat. His face was hairless except for well-defined brows and a shadow of stubble along his jaw. His skin was a pale tan, nothing like her vibrant orange complexion. But it was his eyes that captivated her, an intense gray-green that studied her with equal curiosity. "You're awake," he said, the words meaningless to her ears. Kira sat up slowly, wincing at the stiffness in her limbs. Fluff stirred beside her, blinking its tiny black eyes before stretching its four legs and yawning, revealing a pink tongue and small white teeth. "Thank you," she responded in her own language, knowing he wouldn't understand, but feeling the need to express her gratitude nonetheless. The man tilted his head, then tapped a device on his wrist. He spoke again, this time followed by a mechanical voice that attempted to translate his words into several different languages, none of which Kira recognized. Seeing the confusion on her face, he frowned, then approached slowly, hands raised in a universal gesture of peace. Kira tensed slightly but remained still, watching as he reached for something on a nearby shelf. He returned with a small device, which he placed on the table between them. With deliberate movements, he pointed to himself and said clearly, "Jack?" Kira understood. She pointed to herself and replied, "Kira." A smile broke across his face, an expression so similar to her own people's that it startled her. He then gestured to the blue creature, now investigating the edge of the blanket. "Fluff," Kira said, then added with a small laugh. "Not very creative, I know." Though he couldn't understand her words, Jack seemed to appreciate the sentiment. He chuckled, a warm sound that somehow bridged the gap between their species. Over the next hour, they established a rudimentary form of communication through gestures and drawings on a tablet Jack produced. Kira learned that she had crashed on a planet designated as Frost Point by humans, Jack's species. He was part of a small exploratory team mapping the outer reaches of what they called Sector 7. Jack had been on a solo reconnaissance mission when his sensors detected her crash. Against protocol, he had diverted to investigate, finding her nearly frozen to death among the wreckage. This shelter was one of several emergency outposts scattered across the planet's surface, stocked with supplies and equipment for situations exactly like this one. The main human base was located several hundred miles to the south, where the climate was marginally less hostile. As they communicated, Kira couldn't help but notice the way Jack's eyes occasionally lingered on her. There was professional concern there, certainly, but also something else, an appreciation that transcended species. She found herself equally fascinated by him, by the strength evident in his movements and the intelligence behind his eyes. Fluff, meanwhile, had overcome its initial wariness and now explored the shelter with curious chirps, occasionally returning to bump its head against Jack's hand, a gesture that seemed to delight the human. "Your pet is friendly," Jack said, the words meaningless but the tone clear as he scratched behind Fluff's ears. "He likes you," Kira replied with a smile, watching as Fluff practically melted under the attention. Their moment of connection was interrupted by a sudden blaring alarm. Jack's expression shifted instantly from relaxed to alert. He moved quickly to the console, checking readings with practiced efficiency. Kira didn't need a translator to understand that something was wrong. She rose from the bed, steadier now, and joined him at the console. The screen displayed what appeared to be a weather map, with an ominous mass of swirling patterns approaching their location. Jack pointed to the display, then made sweeping gestures with his hands, mimicking howling wind. He held up 5 fingers, then pointed to a clock on the wall. "A storm," Kira guessed. "Coming in 5 hours?" Jack nodded, seeming pleased that she understood. He then pointed to the shelter around them and made a shaking motion with his hands, followed by a thumbs-down gesture. Kira's heart sank. This shelter won't withstand the storm? Another nod from Jack confirmed her fear. He quickly moved to gather supplies, indicating that they needed to relocate. He pulled up another map on the console, showing a route to what appeared to be a more substantial structure several miles away. As Jack packed essential supplies into a rugged backpack, Kira gathered fluff and prepared herself mentally for venturing back into the cold. Her dress, now dry but still woefully inadequate for the planet's climate, would offer little protection. Sensing her concern, Jack rummaged through a storage compartment and produced a thermal suit similar to his own, though lighter and without the armor plating. He handed it to her with a gentle smile. "Thank you," Kira said, taking the suit gratefully. Jack turned his back, offering her privacy as she changed. The suit was too large, designed for human proportions, but adjustable enough to provide reasonable comfort and, more importantly, protection from the elements. Once she was dressed, with fluff secured in an improvised carrier fashioned from a supply bag, Jack donned his helmet and checked the seals on his armor. He handed Kira a smaller helmet, helping her adjust it to accommodate her different head shape. With a final check of their supplies and equipment, Jack opened the shelter's door. A blast of frigid air rushed in, but this time, Kira was prepared for it. Side by side, they stepped out into the alien landscape, two beings from different worlds united by circumstance and the universal drive to survive. As they began their journey across the ice, Kira glanced at the human walking beside her. There was something reassuring about his presence, a steady confidence that made her believe they might actually survive this ordeal. And beneath that practical appreciation lurked something else, something she wasn't quite ready to examine. A growing fascination with this alien male who had saved her life. The wind howled across the frozen landscape, growing stronger with each passing minute. Kira and Jack trudged through knee-deep snow, their progress slowing as the weather deteriorated. The thermal suit Jack had provided kept Kira's body warm, but the alien environment still took its toll. Her muscles, evolved for a warmer climate, protested with each step. "How much further?" she asked, forgetting momentarily that Jack couldn't understand her words. Instead, she pointed ahead and tilted her head questioningly. Jack checked a device on his wrist, then held up 3 fingers before pointing to a ridge in the distance. 3 kilometers to go. Kira nodded, adjusting the makeshift carrier where Fluff huddled against her chest, protected from the worst of the elements but still trembling slightly. They pressed onward, Jack occasionally taking her elbow to steady her when the terrain grew particularly treacherous. Each time his gloved hand touched her arm, Kira felt a strange flutter in her chest, a reaction she attributed to the stress of their situation rather than the contact itself. As they crested a small rise, Jack suddenly dropped to a crouch, pulling Kira down beside him. He pointed ahead, where a dark shape moved through the swirling snow. The creature was massive, at least twice Jack's height, with 6 limbs and a body covered in thick white fur that made it nearly invisible against the landscape. Only its movement betrayed its presence. "Frost Titan," Jack whispered. The words meaningless to Kira, but his tone conveying the danger. The creature paused, lifting what appeared to be its head to scent the air. Jack and Kira remained perfectly still, barely breathing. After what seemed like an eternity, the predator continued on its path, disappearing into the worsening blizzard. Jack waited several minutes before signaling it was safe to move. They altered their course slightly, giving the predator's last position a wide berth. The detour cost them precious time as the storm intensified around them. By the time the outline of their destination appeared through the snow, a low dome-shaped structure partially embedded in the side of a cliff, visibility had dropped to mere meters, and the wind had become a physical force threatening to knock them off their feet. Jack reached the entrance first, placing his hand against a scanner that glowed briefly before the door slid open. He ushered Kira inside, following quickly and sealing the entrance behind them. The sudden silence as the door closed was almost disorienting after hours of howling wind. Unlike the previous shelter, this facility was substantial, clearly designed for long-term occupation. The main room featured a central heating unit, comfortable seating, and what appeared to be a cooking area. Doorways led to other chambers, suggesting sleeping quarters and perhaps laboratory space. "This is much better," Kira said appreciatively, setting down her pack and carefully extracting Fluff from his carrier. The blue creature immediately began exploring their new surroundings, apparently recovered from the journey. Jack removed his helmet, running a hand through his sweat-dampened hair. The simple gesture was strangely captivating to Kira, so alien yet so familiar. He caught her watching and offered a tired smile before moving to activate the facility's systems. Lights brightened and warm air began circulating through vents in the ceiling. A display panel on one wall flickered to life, showing what Kira assumed were environmental readings and perhaps a status report on the facility. Jack's expression darkened as he studied the display. He beckoned Kira over, pointing to a schematic of the dome structure with a section highlighted in red. "Problem?" she asked, studying the diagram. Jack nodded grimly. He pantomimed a cracking motion, then pointed to the red section and made a whooshing gesture with his hands. Air escaping. "The structure is damaged," Kira guessed. "There's a breach," Jack confirmed with a nod, then pointed to the storm raging outside and drew his finger across his throat. A universal gesture for danger. Kira understood immediately. If the breach worsened during the storm, they could lose pressure integrity. At best, that meant freezing temperatures inside their shelter. At worst, structural failure that could kill them both. Without hesitation, she moved to examine the schematic more closely. Her people were renowned for their engineering skills. It was why she had been selected for the mapping mission in the first place. Though the technology was unfamiliar, the principles of structural integrity were universal. She pointed to the damaged section, then to herself, and made a repairing motion. Jack looked skeptical but followed as she moved purposefully toward what appeared to be a storage area. Inside, they found tools and repair materials. Kira selected several items that resembled the components she would need, showing them to Jack for confirmation. He seemed impressed by her initiative, nodding approval at her selections. The damaged section was in an outer corridor, already significantly colder than the main living area. Jack insisted on examining it first, returning with frost clinging to his eyebrows. He sketched the damage on a tablet for Kira, a stress fracture in the outer shell, currently stable, but likely to worsen under the pressure differentials the storm would create. Together, they devised a repair strategy using a combination of materials. Jack's combat suit allowed him to withstand the cold long enough to apply a temporary sealant to the exterior, while Kira worked from inside, reinforcing the structure with a polymer compound she found in the storage area. As they worked side by side, a rhythm developed between them, passing tools, supporting panels, communicating through gestures and expressions when words failed. Kira found herself admiring Jack's resourcefulness and strength, while he seemed equally impressed by her technical knowledge and quick thinking. When the final seal was in place, Jack ran a diagnostic check that showed the repair holding strong. The relief on his face mirrored Kira's own feelings. They had done it, together. Exhausted but triumphant, they returned to the main living area. Fluff greeted them enthusiastically, apparently having claimed a cushioned chair as his territory during their absence. Jack activated what appeared to be a food preparation unit, producing 2 steaming containers. He offered one to Kira with a questioning look, clearly concerned about whether human food would be safe for her physiology. Kira sniffed the contents cautiously. The aroma was unfamiliar, but not unpleasant. She took a small taste, relieved when her body showed no immediate adverse reaction. In fact, the flavor was surprisingly agreeable, rich and savory. They ate in companionable silence, the storm raging harmlessly outside their now secure shelter. Occasionally, their eyes would meet across the table, and a smile would pass between them. The shared satisfaction of overcoming a challenge together. After the meal, Jack produced a device that projected 3-dimensional images. He cycled through various pictures, landscapes, buildings, people, clearly attempting to show Kira his homeworld. Kira watched, fascinated, as scenes of Earth appeared before her. The diversity of environments was staggering, from vast oceans to towering mountains, lush forests to sprawling cities. Jack's people appeared in many forms, with varying skin tones and features, but all recognizably human. When the display showed Jack in what appeared to be a military uniform, standing proudly with other similarly dressed humans, Kira understood more about her rescuer. He was a soldier, or perhaps an officer, someone trained for discipline and duty. In return, Kira attempted to describe her own world. She drew pictures on the tablet, showing the twin suns that warmed her homeworld and the floating cities where her people lived. She sketched her own species, Their distinctive orange skin with gold speckles, the crests that ran along the males' heads, the long prehensile tails that both genders possessed. Jack watched with evident fascination, asking questions she couldn't understand, but attempting to learn nonetheless. When Kira drew her family unit, herself, her 2 parents, and 3 siblings, Jack smiled warmly before showing an image of his own family. An older couple who shared his features, and a younger female who must have been a sister. As the evening progressed, the storm reached its peak intensity. The repaired section held firm, but the howling wind created an eerie backdrop to their cultural exchange. Eventually, fatigue began to overtake them both. Jack showed Kira to a sleeping chamber, ensuring she had everything she needed for comfort. As he turned to leave for his own room, Kira impulsively reached out, touching his arm. When he faced her, she placed her hand over her heart and bowed slightly, a gesture of gratitude from her culture. Jack seemed to understand. He mirrored the gesture, his gray-green eyes holding hers for a moment longer than necessary before he withdrew. Alone in the room, with Fluff curled at her feet, Kira reflected on the strange turn her life had taken. Stranded on an alien world, dependent on the kindness of a species she had never before encountered, she should have been terrified. Instead, she felt an unexpected sense of security in Jack's presence, and something else, a warmth that had nothing to do with the shelter's heating system. As she drifted towards sleep, the image of Jack's face stayed with her, so alien yet increasingly familiar. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now they were safe from the storm, thanks to their combined efforts. Outside, unbeknownst to the shelter's occupants, the storm reached its peak intensity. The howling winds battered the reinforced structure, testing the repairs they had made. Within their sanctuary, Jack and Kira slept peacefully, each dreaming of worlds the other had never seen. The storm subsided gradually, its fury spent after raging through the night. Dawn brought an eerie stillness to the frozen landscape, broken only by the occasional crack of settling ice. Inside the shelter, Kira woke to the gentle nudging of Fluff against her cheek, the creature eager for attention after a night curled at her feet. "Good morning to you too," she murmured, stroking the soft blue fur. Her body felt surprisingly rested despite the previous day's ordeal. The aroma of something cooking drew her from the sleeping chamber. She found Jack at the preparation unit, his back to her as he manipulated controls with practiced ease. He had changed from his armor into more casual attire, a fitted black thermal suit that emphasized his broad shoulders and strong build. Kira paused in the doorway, suddenly conscious of her own appearance. She had slept in the thermal suit Jack had provided, but it felt bulky and awkward now that immediate survival wasn't her primary concern. She smoothed her silvery hair, wishing she had access to her own clothing and grooming supplies. Jack turned, noticing her presence. His face brightened with a smile that sent an unexpected flutter through Kira's chest. "Morning, father," he said, the word becoming familiar to her now. "Morning," she echoed, attempting his pronunciation. Jack's eyes widened in delight at her use of his language. He gestured enthusiastically to the food he had prepared, then to a doorway she hadn't explored the previous evening. Curious, Kira followed his direction and discovered a cleaning facility, primitive by her standards but functional. Jack had laid out what appeared to be personal care items and a change of clothing. The garments were clearly human-designed, but adjusted to better fit her proportions. The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched her deeply. She took her time cleaning up, reveling in the feeling of being refreshed after days of hardship. The clothing fit surprisingly well, a soft, form-fitting jumpsuit in a deep blue that complemented her orange skin and golden speckles. When she emerged, Jack's appreciative gaze made her skin warm in a way that had nothing to do with the shelter's heating system. They shared the meal he had prepared, communicating through gestures in the few words they had taught each other. After breakfast, Jack activated a console near the main entrance. A display showed exterior conditions. The storm had passed, but it had left behind massive ice formations that now blocked their exit path. Jack's expression grew concerned as he studied the readings. Kira joined him, examining the display. The ice wall appeared formidable, at least 20 feet high, and stretching in both directions beyond the scanner's range. They were effectively trapped until they could find a way through or around it. Jack pointed to a storage area where they had found tools the previous day, then made a digging motion. Kira nodded in understanding. They would have to cut their way out. They suited up for the hostile environment. Jack once again in his combat armor and Kira in the thermal suit she had worn during their journey. Fluff would remain safely inside, content with the warming pad Jack had fashioned for him. Outside, the scale of their predicament became apparent. The storm had created a natural fortress of ice around the shelter, beautiful in its glittering majesty, but dangerously confining. Jack produced what appeared to be a cutting tool, a handheld device that emitted a focused beam of heat. They worked side by side, Jack cutting through the thickest sections while Kira cleared away the debris. The physical labor was demanding, but there was something oddly satisfying about working together against the elements. Occasionally, their hands would brush, or they would catch each other's eye, sharing a moment of connection that transcended their biological differences. As the sun reached its zenith, a pale disk barely visible through the planet's perpetual cloud cover, they paused to rest. Sitting on a section of cleared ice, they shared water and nutrient bars from Jack's supplies. "Your world," Kira said slowly, pointing upward to indicate space, then to him. "Far?" Jack seemed to understand her question. He nodded, then held his hands far apart to indicate great distance. "Earth," he said, tapping his chest. Then he pointed to her questioningly. "Lyria," she replied, naming her homeworld. She held her hands even further apart than he had, emphasizing the vast distance. Jack's expression softened with what might have been sympathy, or perhaps something deeper. He reached out hesitantly and touched her hand. The gesture was simple but profound, acknowledgement of their shared isolation on this frozen world. Kira didn't pull away. Instead, she turned her hand to clasp his, marveling at how different yet similar their anatomies were. 5 fingers, though hers were more slender and slightly longer. Warm skin, though his lacked the golden speckles that adorned hers. They remained like that for a moment, connected physically in a way that bridged their vastly different origins. When Jack finally released her hand to resume their work, Kira felt the absence of his touch like a tangible thing. The afternoon brought progress, but also new challenges. As they cut deeper into the ice wall, they discovered that the formation was more extensive than initially thought. What had appeared to be a simple barrier was actually a complex structure of interlocking ice sheets, created by the unique wind patterns of the storm. By late afternoon, exhaustion began to take its toll. Jack's movements grew slower, his breathing more labored. Kira, too, felt the strain in muscles unaccustomed to such prolonged physical effort. And when Jack's cutting tool sputtered and died, its power source depleted, they were forced to acknowledge that they wouldn't break through before nightfall. With the temperature already dropping as the weak sun descended, they had no choice but to return to the shelter. Inside, the warmth was welcoming, but a new tension filled the air between them. The day's shared labor and brief moments of connection had shifted something in their relationship, moving it beyond mere survival cooperation to something neither of them had anticipated. As they shed their outer gear, Kira noticed Jack wincing as he rotated his shoulder. Without thinking, she moved behind him, placing her hands on the offending muscle. On her world, touch healing was commonplace, a natural extension of social bonds. Jack stiffened momentarily at the unexpected contact and then relaxed as her fingers worked the knot of tension in his shoulder. A soft sound of appreciation escaped him, encouraging her to continue. "On Lyria," she said, knowing he wouldn't understand the words but speaking anyway. "This is how we care for those who matter to us." Jack turned to face her, their bodies now close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. His gray-green eyes searched hers, filled with questions neither of them had language to ask. Slowly giving her every opportunity to withdraw, he raised his hand to her face. His fingers traced the pattern of golden speckles along her cheekbone with wonder, as if mapping constellations on an alien sky. "Beautiful," he said, the word new to her, but its meaning unmistakable in his tone. Kira's heart raced, her breath catching as cultural differences suddenly seemed insignificant compared to the universal language they were discovering. She leaned into his touch, her deep blue eyes never leaving his. What happened next transcended the need for words. Their lips met, tentatively at first, then with growing certainty. It was strange and wonderful, this human gesture of affection that somehow felt both alien and exactly right. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Jack rested his forehead against hers, another gesture she found oddly moving in its intimacy. That night, they shared the same sleeping chamber, their bodies finding comfort in each other's warmth. Cultural differences created moments of awkward discovery and surprising delight as they explored this new territory between their species. Their connection was both physical and emotional, a bridge across the vast interstellar gulf that had once separated their worlds. As they drifted toward sleep, entwined in each other's arms, Kira realized that being stranded on this frozen planet had led her to a discovery more significant than any mapping mission could have provided. In Jack, she had found something she never knew she was searching for, a connection that defied the odds of their different origins. Outside, the ice world continued its slow, cold existence. But within the shelter, two beings from a distant stars had found a warmth that no winter could extinguish. The morning light filtered through the shelter's small windows, casting golden patterns across the sleeping quarters. Jack woke first, momentarily disoriented before the events of the previous day rushed back. Kira lay beside him, her orange skin glowing softly in the dawn light. Silver hair splayed across the pillow like liquid metal. He watched her for a moment, still marveling at how something so alien could feel so right. Their night together had been a revelation, awkward at times as they navigated their physiological differences, but ultimately profound in ways he hadn't anticipated. A sudden beeping from the main room broke the peaceful moment. Jack carefully extracted himself from Kira's embrace and moved quickly to the console, recognizing the alert pattern of an incoming transmission. The screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Commander Harris, Jack's superior at the main human outpost. "Lieutenant Reynolds, do you copy?" "We've been trying to reach you since the storm cleared." Jack straightened instinctively. "Yes, sir. Communications were down during the storm. I'm at emergency shelter Echo 7. We detected unusual energy signatures from your location yesterday. Report your status." Jack hesitated, his military training warring with his newfound feelings for Kira. "I'm not alone, sir. I rescued a survivor from a crashed spacecraft." Harris's eyes narrowed. "Xenoid?" The term, technically correct but carrying undertones of otherness that now grated on Jack, made him wince internally. "Yes, sir. Female, humanoid, non-hostile. Her name is Kira. Your orders were reconnaissance only, Lieutenant. No contact with indigenous life." "She's not indigenous, sir. Her ship crashed during the storm. She would have died without intervention." Harris's expression remained impassive. "We're sending an extraction team. ETA 4 hours. Secure the Xenoid for transport and debriefing." The transmission ended before Jack could respond, leaving him staring at a blank screen. The implications were clear. Kira would be treated as a security concern rather than a person deserving of respect and dignity. "Jack?" He turned to find Kira standing in the doorway, Fluff cradled in her arms. Something in his expression must have alerted her to the situation. "Problem?" she asked, her command of his language growing daily. Jack nodded grimly. "My people coming," he said slowly, pointing to the screen, then making a grabbing motion followed by pointing to her. "Take you." Kira's deep blue eyes widened with understanding. "Not good?" "No," Jack confirmed. "Not good." He paced the room, considering their options. The extraction team would follow standard protocol, secure the Xenoid, transport her to the main base for interrogation, then likely detention while Earth Command decided her fate. She would be treated as a potential threat, not as the remarkable being he had come to care for. Jack made his decision. Moving to another console, he activated the shelter's emergency protocols. Screens lit up with status reports and inventory lists. "What doing?" Kira asked, setting Fluff down to join him. Jack pointed to a schematic of the shelter, then to a section marked in blue. "Ships," he said, making a flying motion with his hand. "Small ships." Kira's expression brightened with hope. "Leave?" "Yes," Jack confirmed. "Together." He led her to a sealed door at the rear of the shelter. After entering a security code, the door slid open to reveal a small hangar containing 2 compact vessels. Emergency evacuation, craft designed for planetary escape if necessary. While Kira examined the ships with obvious technical interest, Jack gathered supplies. food, medical equipment, navigation data, everything they would need for a journey off-world. He downloaded the shelter's database to a portable device, including all information on known star systems and potential habitable worlds. As he worked, Jack was acutely aware that he was about to become a deserter, abandoning his post, violating direct orders, and essentially ending his military career. Strangely, the thought brought more relief than regret. His time with Kira had shown him a different way of seeing the universe, one where connection mattered more than conquest, where differences were to be celebrated rather than feared. Kira seemed to sense his internal conflict. She approached, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "Why help me?" she asked, her pronunciation careful but clear. Jack met her gaze, finding the words despite their limited shared vocabulary. "You, important," he said, touching his chest over his heart. "More important than orders." Her expression softened with understanding. She reached up, tracing the contours of his face as if committing them to memory. Together, she affirmed, they worked efficiently to prepare the evacuation craft. Jack was impressed by Kira's intuitive grasp of the ship's systems. Her people were clearly advanced in space travel technology. With Fluff secured in a makeshift carrier, they were nearly ready for departure when the shelter's perimeter alarm sounded. The extraction team had arrived early. Jack checked the external cameras. A military transport had landed approximately half a kilometer from the shelter, and 6 armored figures were already advancing across the ice. "No time!" he told Kira urgently, sealing the hangar and initiating the launch sequence for one of the evacuation craft. The small ship hummed to life, its systems running through automatic checks as they boarded. Jack took the pilot's seat with Kira beside him and Fluff secured between them. His fingers flew across the controls, overriding safety protocols and preparing for immediate departure. Through the hangar's external cameras, they watched the extraction team reach the shelter's main entrance. They would breach the door within minutes, only to find their quarry already gone. "Ready?" Jack asked, his hand hovering over the launch control. Kira placed her hand over his, her golden speckles catching the light. "Ready?" Together, they activated the launch sequence. The hangar roof retracted, revealing the pale sky above. With a surge of power, the evacuation craft lifted off, breaking free of the ice world that had both threatened their lives and brought them together. As they ascended through the atmosphere, Jack plotted a course away from the human outpost, toward the edge of the system. The small craft wasn't designed for interstellar travel, but it could reach one of the outer moons where they might find a trading post or passing ship. Kira watched the frozen planet recede beneath them, her expression a mixture of relief and wonder. "Where go now?" she asked. Jack considered the question. He had no home to return to now. His desertion would be reported within hours. Kira's homeworld was unknown to human navigation systems, potentially unreachable without more advanced technology. "Together," he said simply, echoing her earlier sentiment. "Find new home." The simplicity of the answer seemed to satisfy her. She smiled, her deep blue eyes reflecting the starlight now visible through the view screen. As they cleared the planet's gravitational pull, a warning light flashed on the console. Jack checked the readings and felt his heart sink. The extraction team had deployed pursuit craft, faster and better armed than their evacuation vessel. "Problem," he told Kira, pointing to the radar display. She studied the screen, then surprised him by taking control of the navigation system. Her slender fingers moved with confidence across the unfamiliar interface, making adjustments to their course. "Trust," she said, meeting his eyes briefly before returning her attention to the controls. Jack nodded, relinquishing command to her. Whatever she had in mind, he trusted her completely. Kira directed their craft toward what appeared to be a dense asteroid field at the system's edge. Jack's initial alarm faded as he realized her strategy. The pursuit craft would have difficulty following them through the tightly packed rocks, and their smaller vessel had the advantage of maneuverability. As they entered the field, Kira's piloting skills became evident. She navigated the treacherous path with precision that spoke of natural talent and extensive training. Jack provided support, managing power distribution and monitoring the pursuers, who had indeed slowed their approach. Fluff chirped excitedly from his carrier, seemingly enjoying the rapid movements and close passes to massive asteroids. The creature's resilience continued to amaze Jack, adapting to each new situation with curious enthusiasm. Deeper into the asteroid field, Kira suddenly adjusted their course toward a particularly large rock formation. Jack was about to question the decision when he saw what she had detected, a narrow fissure in the asteroid's surface, just wide enough for their craft but impossible for the larger pursuit vessels. With breathtaking precision, Kira guided them into the crevice, which opened it to a hollow cavity within the asteroid itself. She powered down all non-essential systems, leaving them in near darkness as the pursuit craft passed overhead, unable to detect their presence. In the dim emergency lighting, Jack turned to Kira with newfound admiration. "You, amazing," he said, the simple words inadequate for what he felt. She smiled, the golden speckles on her skin seeming to glow in the low light. "We amazing," she corrected, taking his hand. They remained hidden for several hours, monitoring communications and sensor readings. Eventually, the pursuit craft abandoned their search, returning to the main outpost. Only then did Kira power up their systems and guide them out of their hiding place. With the immediate danger past, they set course for the outermost moon of the system, a place Jack knew hosted a small, independent trading post frequented by ships from various worlds. There, they might find passage to a neutral system where both humans and Kira's people occasionally ventured. As they traveled, Jack used the shelter's database to create a more comprehensive translation program. Slowly, their ability to communicate improved, allowing for deeper conversations about their respective worlds and cultures. Kira told him of Lyria, a warm world orbiting twin suns, where her people had built cities that floated among the clouds. She had been a cartographer, mapping uncharted regions of space when her ship malfunctioned, sending her through an unstable wormhole to the system where Jack found her. In turn, Jack shared stories of Earth and humanity's expansion to the stars. He spoke of the beauty of his homeworld's oceans and forests, so different from the frozen landscape where they had met. He explained his disillusionment with the military's approach to alien contact, the fear and suspicion that governed their protocols. "Humans afraid of different," he said, struggling to express complex concepts with his limited vocabulary. Kira nodded in understanding. "My people too," she admitted, "fear what not know." "We different," Jack said, gesturing between them. "But same too." The simple observation contained a profound truth that both of them had discovered through their unexpected bond. Despite evolving on worlds light years apart, they shared fundamental needs and emotions, the capacity for compassion, courage, and connection that transcended their biological differences. 3 days after their escape, they reached the trading moon. The small outpost was a hodgepodge of structures built into the lunar surface, home to a diverse population of species from dozens of worlds. Here, humans were just one of many visitors, with no special authority or privilege. They docked at a public landing pad, using the last of their credits to pay the fee. With Fluff perched on Kira's shoulder, they ventured into the bustling marketplace that served as the outpost's center. The variety of beings moving through the crowded space would once have overwhelmed Jack, but his time with Kira had opened his mind to the rich diversity of sentient life. They moved among traders and travelers from countless worlds, searching for information about ships bound for neutral territories. At a communication hub, they discovered something unexpected, a posting from Kira's homeworld, offering a substantial reward for information about her whereabouts. Her disappearance had not gone unnoticed. Her people had been searching for her. "Family," Kira said softly, touching the screen with trembling fingers. "Looking for me." The revelation brought both joy and complication. Contact with Kira's people would mean safety for her, but potential danger for Jack. While humans were unknown to Lyrians, he would be as much a curiosity to them as Kira had been to his commanders. "What want do?" Jack asked, his simplified language reflecting his uncertainty. Kira studied his face, her deep blue eyes searching his. "Want both," she said finally. "Home and you." The simplicity of her answer touched something profound in Jack. In that moment, he realized that home was no longer a place for him. It was wherever Kira was. They found a communication terminal that allowed for secure, anonymous messages. With Jack's help, Kira composed a careful response to her people's posting, revealing her survival but withholding their location until certain assurances could be made, specifically safe passage for both her and her human companion. While awaiting a response, they secured temporary lodging in the outpost residential section, a small, single-room dwelling carved from the moon's rock. The space was cramped but private, allowing them a moment of respite after days of tension and flight. Fluff immediately claimed a spot on the room's only chair, curling into a contented blue ball and promptly falling asleep. Jack and Kira stood awkwardly in the center of the room, suddenly aware of the intimacy of their situation now that immediate survival wasn't their primary concern. "Rest," Jack suggested, gesturing to the narrow sleeping platform. Kira nodded, but neither moved. Instead, she stepped closer to him, placing her hand on his chest where his heart beat steadily beneath her palm. "Jack," she said softly, "on Lyria, when two join, become one family. Forever." She tapped her chest, then his. "Us. One?" The question held implications beyond their immediate circumstances. She wasn't just asking about their physical connection, but something deeper, a commitment that would transcend the vast differences in their origins. Jack covered her hand with his own. "Yes," he said simply. "One. Forever." The certainty in his voice seemed to dissolve any remaining hesitation between them. Their lips met in a kiss that felt both familiar and thrillingly new, as if they were discovering each other for the first time all over again. What followed was a dance of discovery and delight, their bodies finding harmony despite their differences. Cultural barriers fell away as instinct and affection guided them, creating a connection that bridged the gap between their worlds more effectively than any translator ever could. Afterward, they lay entwined on the narrow platform, Kira's head resting on Jack's chest as he traced the patterns of golden speckles along her shoulder. The simple intimacy of the moment felt more profound than the physical act they had shared, a quiet acknowledgement of the bond that had formed between them against all odds. "Your people," Jack said after a while, "will they accept?" Kira propped herself up on one elbow, her silvery hair cascading around them both. "Lyrians value courage, honor," she said, her vocabulary expanding daily. "You show both. They will see." Before Jack could respond, a chime sounded from the communication terminal they had set up. Kira wrapped herself in a sheet and moved to check the message, her expression shifting from curiosity to surprise to joy as she read. "My family," she said, turning to Jack with shining eyes. "They send ship. 3 days." Jack felt a complex mixture of emotions, relief for Kira's sake, anxiety about his own reception among her people, and a bittersweet acknowledgement that their time in this liminal space between worlds was coming to an end. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. They ventured into the outpost marketplace, using the last of their resources to acquire supplies and information. Jack was fascinated by the variety of beings they encountered, each species with its own unique biology and culture, yet all finding common ground in this remote trading post. Kira attracted curious glances from many of the traders. Lyrians were apparently rare in this sector, and in her distinctive orange skin and golden speckles made her particularly noticeable. Jack found himself feeling oddly proud when walking beside her, aware of the admiring looks she received. On the evening before the Lyrian ship was due to arrive, they sat together on an observation deck overlooking the landing pads. The vast starfield above them sparkled with possibilities, each point of light potentially harboring worlds they had yet to discover. "What if your people reject me?" Jack asked, giving voice to the fear that had been growing as their departure approached. Kira turned to him, her expression serious. "Then we find new home," she said firmly, "together." The simplicity of her answer reassured him more than any elaborate promise could have. Whatever came next, they would face it as one. The Lyrian ship arrived precisely on schedule. A sleek vessel with flowing lines that reminded Jack of ocean waves. It was smaller than he had expected, clearly not a military craft, but rather a private transport. As they approached the landing pad, Kira gripping his hand tightly with Fluff perched on her shoulder, the ship's entry ramp descended. 2 figures emerged, a male and female Lyrian, both with the same orange skin and golden speckles as Kira, though the male's coloration was darker and his build more substantial. "Family?" Kira whispered, her voice thick with emotion. The reunion that followed brought tears to Jack's eyes. The Lyrians embraced Kira with obvious relief and joy, their musical language flowing around him in a stream of unintelligible sounds. Fluff chirped excitedly, bouncing from shoulder to shoulder as if greeting old friends. Then as one, the Lyrians turned to Jack. He stood straight, meeting their gaze with what he hoped was appropriate respect. To his surprise, Kira's father, as he assumed the male to be, stepped forward and performed the same gesture Kira had once shown him, hand over heart, followed by a slight bow. "Welcome," the older Lyrian said, in heavily accented but understandable English. "Friend of Kira, friend of family." The acceptance, so simple and complete, left Jack momentarily speechless. Kira moved to his side, slipping her hand into his. "Not just friend," she told her parents proudly. "My one." A look of understanding passed between the elder Lyrians. Rather than the shock or disapproval Jack had feared, they exchanged what appeared to be knowing smile. "The heart finds its match across any distance," Kira's mother said, her English more fluid than her mate's. "We have waited long for Kira to find hers." They were welcomed aboard the Lyrian vessel, which was as beautiful inside as out. The interior spaces flowed organically with curved walls and soft lighting that reminded Jack of dawn on Earth. He was given a private chamber adjacent to Kira's, though they both knew the arrangement was merely formal. As the ship prepared for departure, Jack stood at a viewing portal, watching the trading outpost recede. Behind him, he heard Kira enter, her light footsteps now as familiar to him as his own heartbeat. "Regret?" she asked softly, coming to stand beside him. Jack turned to her, taking in the beauty of her alien features that had become so dear to him. "No," he said truthfully. "New beginning." She smiled, the expression lighting her entire face. "My father says Earth known to us. Not official, but traders speak. Possible visit someday." The news surprised and delighted Jack. The thought that he might someday show Kira the oceans and forests of his homeworld filled him with unexpected joy. "And until then?" he asked. Kira's deep blue eyes sparkled with mischief and promise. "Until then, much to learn about each other, about us." As the ship accelerated toward the jump point that would take them to Lyrian space, Jack pulled Kira into his arms. Their journey had begun with a desperate embrace on a frozen world, her clutching her pet, preparing for death until he appeared to save them both. Now that embrace had transformed into something neither could have imagined, a bridge between worlds, a promise of adventures to come, and a love that defied the vast emptiness of space. Fluff chirped happily from his perch on a nearby shelf, as if approving of this new chapter in their shared story. Outside the viewport, stars streaked into lines of light as the ship entered hyperspace, carrying them toward a future as bright and full of possibility as the golden speckles on Kira's skin.